All right. Good evening to everyone. Kayla, Josh, how are you both doing this evening?
Fantastic.
Can't complain.
Yeah,
Happy to be here.
yeah. Likewise. Well, we let people join here. We've got a great crowd coming along, and if you can't join us, we'll of course send up the recording later if you have to drop off early. But Kayla, what side of the landlording world were you doing today?
Leasing out one of my rental units. We it took a while. Not like it has been in the previous couple of months, but definitely it was a challenge. But I am very confident that I was able to get my shiny goose. And you know what? Gonna make sure that we take good care of these tenants because once you have good ones, you really got to hold on to them really, really tightly and treat them well.
Yeah, it's becoming a little bit harder to find some of those great tenants these days, which is kind of the point of our webinar this evening. So, as I'm sure a few more people will join, but thank you to everyone for that took the time to join us today. We've got some awesome speakers with us today. We're going to go over a lot of key topics uh, this evening. So why don't we kick it off and I'll share with you what we're actually going to do today. So the point of this webinar, it's going to be kind of a broad conversation between the three of us around some of the best practices, but really want to help you avoid renting to the wrong tenant and give you some tips and tricks to uh, actually find the right individual. We've got some great perspective based on our different backgrounds. First thing, where Josh is going to talk a lot about some of the changes in the market. He deals a lot with data with Rentals.ca. Kayla is going to give some insights that she's seeing from boots on the ground day to day. We'll talk through strategy of creating listings, attracting better tenants. Again, having kind of the platform side that Rentals.ca, Josh's unique expertise in that area, alongside what Kayla is doing and seeing on the advocacy side and from those landlords and property managers, I think should be a really interesting viewpoint into what can get done. We'll talk about screening, rent reporting, highlight some of the FrontLobby features in that aspect, how you can leverage technology as well as some of the best practices to make sure you're finding that right individual. And then, of course, we'll talk a little bit about evolving rental laws. Kayla's really going to be leading this discussion. She's way in deep as far as speaking with local politicians, understanding the way the winds are shifting. So that'll be a really good insight. And then, of course, any Q&As that come up. So just a bit of housekeeping. We would love to interact with you as you're going along. If you have a question, drop it in the Q&A. We'll try and get to those towards the end. And if not, we can do follow-up messages later on. So again, thanks for everything. To kick things off, we've got some great people with us. If you've been with us before, you know Kayla. She's heads up Ontario Landlords Watch, 15 years in advocacy. She's been a housing provider for well over 20 years. You'd never know it, but trust me, it's
Aw.
true. The knowledge is there. So really happy to have her. And we've got Josh here, which I'm really excited
Oh,
about. If you haven't been to rentals.ca, check it out. They've got incredible data, which we'll talk about, as well as they're the largest listing platform within Canada for searching rentals. So we'll talk about how to leverage that stuff. So Josh, Kayla, welcome to both of you.
thanks for
Thank
having
you.
us. I'm excited.
Yeah. So let's kick right into it. I'm going to ask the first question, but first we're going to kick off a quick poll just so we can get some understanding of what's going on. So, what I would like to ask everyone on the call, what's your biggest concern as a landlord right now? And while you're going ahead and answer that, Josh, Kayla, whoever wants to kick it off, how have you seen the current rental market change from 2024 to 2025? And what are you seeing this mean to landlords today?
I'm
I'm
happy
answering this poll.
to.
Hold on.
Josh,
I
why don't you kick us off
Yeah,
while
I'm
Kayla
happy to
figures out
kick
the
it off.
poll? Yeah.
you guys distracted me. I was like, yeah, this is good. Everyone answered the poll there. Okay,
yeah.
now I'm good.
What a difference a year can make. I think we got a little spoiled from the past couple years where it was a really great market to be a landlord, and it was almost, on easy mode, landlording on easy mode, where there was rent just going up and up and up, and tons of tenants that were qualified. But in the last 18 months, especially in the last 6 months, it's really started to accelerate. We've seen the market dramatically shift. So, just some very high level things across Canada. We've seen asking rents year over year go down 2.5%. That's based on the Rentals.ca rent report. And it's actually much more extreme in, I'll say, larger, more expensive markets. So Toronto's down 5.1% year over year. Vancouver's down 6.5%. We've seen these trends that's just the top level rent. On top of that, more and more buildings are offering high level incentives and move-in perks to try to get tenants interested and in the door. We've seen even, not just half month, 1 month, 2 month 3 month, I've even seen free rent on like a 18-month lease. So it's really starting to, there's a lot of pressure to find qualified tenants. And, we're seeing that also on the other side. Vacancy rates are up, and it's taking a lot longer for landlords to find qualified tenants, longer turnover. There's a number of reasons behind this. From what I'm seeing, a big reason is one, um, I kind of break it into two buckets. Been a massive dip in immigration over the last couple of years. We had, I think, net permanent residents were going up about 1 million every 2 quarters. And actually, in the last couple of quarters, we've actually seen a net outflow of non-permanent residents. So instead of all these new renters coming in looking for rentals, we've seen a huge decrease in those. And then also just lower churn and turnover among existing and new renters. So that's students. They're staying at home longer after university. They move back with mom and dad. And those that maybe recently moved in the last 2, 3 years, maybe used to move every 2 or 3 years. And now you're moving 4 or 5 years, making that longer, especially in rent controlled areas where you say, you know what, I got a good deal. I moved in a couple years ago. I don't want to move and suddenly my rent's going to go up 20, 30%. And so we're seeing a lot more people hesitant to take the dip and really move when, mid 20-year-olds would really move a lot more frequently, or even young 30-year-olds. And they're taking a lot longer to move and they're moving less frequently. And again, the last thing I'll just note on this is we're also seeing just kind of an increase in non-payments. Arrears are up, eviction notices are up, and the LTV is still crazy backed up in Ontario. And so it's just taking a lot longer to get rid of these people. And so you really got to be careful about who you're finding, especially as the market has really slowed down on the demand side. So that's what I'm seeing on my end. Kayla?
Same thing. Like I'm nodding. I'm like, yeah, go Josh. 'Cause that's what we're also seeing. Like, and you can see that through the news when they talk about the layoffs that are happening in the colleges because there is a cap that is on international students that are coming there. And I think we're seeing that in the hubs, especially I'm in the KWC area, Cambridge, Kitchener, Waterloo. So we are seeing that from Conestoga College where we are seeing a decrease. And it's taken quite a bit. Like I said in the beginning, that I just put my 2 bedroom on the market and there was a lot of seem to be qualifying people, but you have to read between the lines. And now, because the tariffs that are happening, we're now even looking at the type of job and the income source of where these tenants are coming from in order to accept them as qualified tenants into the property and making sure that they're not lying to us as they're coming in. But we are seeing definitely a down. But on the other side of that, I start to see a little bit on government is now saying, hey, we want you back to the office. We have companies saying we want you back to the office. So a lot of people who have been able to work remotely are now like, crap, I got to move back into the city, or which is great for the businesses that are there and maybe that rental strategy. But we do have to step up the initiative of, providing a little bit more instead of less like we used to be able to. So we do have to give a little bit more, and maybe not just a rent discount or providing, different type of services to them. But there are tenants out there and they are very picky and they're looking for that demand from the landlord. So now it's going to be a perfect time to see what you can do as a landlord to step up your offerings and making sure that you have what these good tenants are looking for.
Kayla, Josh gave us a lot of wonderful data points. Like, from a sentiment side of the landlords, like you talk to, I don't know, hundreds of people a week that are landlords getting into it, or they have 100 units, whatever it is. What are you hearing as far as their feelings around the market? Are they going deeper, seeing this as opportunities, holding firm, getting out? Like, what are they feeling these days?
Unfortunately, in Ontario market, they're getting out.
Yeah.
We're definitely seeing, and it's because of the policies. It's about the restrictions. We do see a lot of changing um, um, behaviors from elected officials, especially from the Toronto market, that is starting to make landlords responsible for, or trying to make landlords through a private bill to make it cooler, like where they have to control the cooling temperature, pretty much, AKA provide air conditioning to their tenants. They also see it from different city councilors of Toronto trying to label and color code their landlords for, based on their inspections for their properties.
Mhm.
We have rent eviction bylaws that are spreading right through every single province. And it's not just like a city to city situation, like other provinces are looking at other provinces. So if it's not happening in your province, yeah, just be cautious because we do see elected officials look at each other when they are trying to cool the market as much as they are. But it's still good of an investment to be in. So don't get like, I don't want anyone like starting to put up their properties for sale right now. You just have to be very careful on who you're accepting, and you have to pivot through this type of market that's happening, and just be bring extra caution to how we're accepting the tenants, but and get involved. You have to get involved in what rules are happening so that you can be aware of it and be able to pivot, because you're becoming aware of what could potentially happen. And most importantly, you have to speak up, and you have to say, yes, this is what you want, but this is what I would propose as housing providers, because I think we're such a big group of people, and we're very connected. We just have to get more organized, so to speak, when it comes down to changing different rules and regulations to help us and help the tenants in the meantime.
Yeah. Well, we'll save that advocacy
Yeah,
conversation for a little bit later, because I know if we go
yeah.
down that pathway, the hour's going to be gone before we know it.
I
So
know. We only got an hour, guys. Spit it
yeah,
out. Your question's
yeah,
ready to go.
yeah, for sure. There's an interesting comment that came through a gentleman sharing that he's seeing some of his best tenants moving out and actually buying properties, which you're always going to see as these rental markets start to shift. And we've definitely heard that through FrontLobby as well. Sticking with the listing side here. So Josh, Rentals.ca is the largest listing platform within Canada. So when you think about individuals, property managers, landlords are listing on your site, you want to share some of the common mistakes that you're seeing right now, and have those shifted at all as the market's gotten a little bit tighter?
Yeah, I think so. I think again, to me, I think the big thing is just it, as Kayla said, it's not that it's not a good time to be a landlord. It's still a very good time to be a landlord, but you're not playing on easy mode. That's kind of the way I look at it. Is it used to be you can make a lot of mistakes, not do your research, and still end up doing very well because just everything was kind of going in the right direction. And today you got to do your research, you got to do your homework, and you really gotta, know your stuff. So, I mean, the biggest thing that we see landlords make mistakes on is just not updating their priors and not doing the research, where they think the market's still from a year or two ago and they're posting prices that are not, they don't reflect market rents anymore. And so they're often either way too high, or sometimes they're way too low even. I see sometimes I see people who, they were lucky they had a really good tenant and they last posted, you know, 8, 9 years ago. And I'm like, these prices are completely out, not what the market is today. And so just make sure you do your research. That's my big thing. Make sure you're looking at other properties in your area. And then again, know your area, do your research. That means having great photos. That means understanding what makes the area you're in unique and who is kind of the ideal tenant for that, who's willing to pay a premium. Is it a 2 bedroom that's in a great family friendly neighborhood that you're really going to want to highlight those features? And is that kind of the tenant you're looking for, or is this kind of more downtown area, or maybe it's a student area? And again, what makes it unique, and what are you able to say and show that will help you get the right rent and the right tenant? And to me, that's really, I think, the biggest thing that landlords need to do today is just make sure they're doing the research.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a few years ago when you could post something with no photos and say we're doing an open house on Saturday afternoon between 1 and 5, and come in and then you pick the best one, right? It's almost getting back to, it's like, okay, you've got a very expensive asset. You're trying to find the right individual for it. You need to do your due diligence, set up your processes, list it properly. It's almost like selling your property again, as far as trying to market it, but pricing it appropriately and having those conversations with individuals. Definitely heard a lot of the same things. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I just saw that there's a post, and, happy that Rentals.ca was number two. I will just say the number one was social media and Facebook, which again, I use Facebook Marketplace. It's a great tool. I always just say this: whenever I sell anything on Facebook Marketplace, what's the first thing that someone asks me? I got 2 young kids, I'm selling some strollers or something. First thing, I post it for $100. Will you do 80? I don't think that's what we want with rentals. We do not want people who are going to be haggling us down first thing. I've just found that the quality of tenant there, or lead, is much lower. Doesn't mean you shouldn't use it. You should be using as much as you can. We want to, in a market like this, you got to use all resources. But I think it's not enough anymore to just rely on social media. So that's just my 2 cents to anyone who voted. I hope that helps.
No, I actually like that because I first time ever, like in the longest time where I went to Home Depot and got myself a for rent sign and I put it up in my window and I was like, this feels weird. And I'm like doing it with a marker, but then I had stickers and it's like 2 bed 519. And it was like, and you put it up in the window. My husband's like, I don't like my number on this. It's like, well, you wanted it. But you know what? This is where you kind of, when you're doing the drive-by and people see the area, it's actually like something old that we could bring back a little bit just because of the market being downturn is getting these little signs right up in the window because they know the area.
100%.
And some people are like, I want to get in that building. So I think our big guys do it. Like they have like a big thing that's right on their property all the time though. So you don't really know if it's available or not. But hey, when you see that little highlighter, black and orange sign in the window, like your eyes do become attracted to it. So that's what I also been doing to pivot through these crazy times.
100%. And it's not this or that, it's all of them. You got to do it all. I think that's the other big thing is you got to do more than one thing. So,
Oh,
um,
everywhere.
yeah, exactly. Be everywhere. Um,
And an interesting question came through. Someone was asking around,
yeah,
do you suggest annual leases or month to month? I have an opinion about this. When you're doing long-term rents, you want to sign a year's lease. You don't want to kind of roll over on some of those things. You want to tie them in, make sure your rent's guaranteed, provides you additional protections as a landlord. But maybe Kayla, maybe ask to you, it's like when you're desperate or struggling to get someone into your property, we see often landlords make mistakes and kind of go soft on some of the things they initially would have considered non-negotiables. Would you agree with my assessment around annual leases? And is there other things you're seeing that landlords are kind of folding on that you would strongly suggest they make sure they keep in their rental listing to make sure they get that right tenant?
I get that question all the time, and I think people are shocked by my personal preference, but it's always month to month.
Interesting.
Is month to month. And it's just because you never know what the market is going to do. And you want to have that clause that just gets you out when you need to be. With Ontario, is that if you're in that yearly lease, you cannot come in and say, hey, your lease is now being terminated as of like 60 days, or for the fact that the landlord wants to move into it. You have to wait for that yearly lease to be done. So and part of it's not just for the landlord, it's also for the tenants. You know, we know like, hey, I don't want you feeling pressured to live in this property for a year. I don't want you feeling that you have to sublet it or assign it to another tenant. And we know that, you know, job opportunities may call and you might have to fly out of this country. I don't want you to feel pressured. And hey, you come into this property looking at it and seems like it's going to be a fit for you. If it's not, I don't want you feeling pressured to be in here and making my life hell because you don't want to be here. So I'm going to give you that option to give me that 60 days here in Ontario instead of forcing them to stay within that yearly lease. And again, a lot of the benefits of the fact that a yearly lease doesn't even mean anything in Ontario. It automatically goes month to month. I am advocating to change that though. I think a yearly lease needs to mean a yearly lease so that landlords do have that option to pivot and move and do renovations and do whatever they need to do for their family. But I'll keep you all posted.
Well, more of the story, obviously, don't listen to the guy from San Francisco about the Ontario market. So I'd say we should move on.
yeah. So
No,
Grant, I
that good
actually have a
insight.
question for you.
Yeah, sure.
So I know FrontLobby offers screening and rent reporting tools, but how can landlords leverage these to reduce tenant risk and incentivize on-time payments, which I know has been an increasing issue, especially in Ontario?
Yeah, we've seen a huge increase, especially places like Ontario, where Kayla alluded to this earlier, which is kind of my stance on leases varying from, but it's like it's hard to get a tenant out if they stop paying rent in a place like Ontario. We see it similar in New York, California on our US side of the business. But one of the things we actually recommend ties into the listing. So we provide clauses that you can put in your applications and leases, which let prospective tenants know that you are going to be reporting rental data to the credit bureaus. It obtains consent from them for reporting, which we can talk about in a second. But when you're looking at highlighting your property to potential individuals, letting them know that they can finally use their largest expense to improve their credit file is a big benefit for any individual moving in. On the contrary, someone that's less likely to pay on time is going to go somewhere else because they know that there's going to be an immediate negative impact on their financial well-being if they don't pay rent. So when you're looking at our platform, like that's the first thing I'd recommend. Put it on your rentals.ca listing or wherever you're posting it. Highlight that you do rent reporting. Insert these clauses when you're going through. So you speak to an applicant, say, hey, by the way, this is something they offer, and then you can have that payment. and then follow through with it. Of course, starting to report on that individual when they're in your property definitely helps from that component. From the screening side, I think we'll dive deeper into this a little bit more, but like doing proper screening is critical. Going through, pulling credit reports, doing background checks, making sure you use a platform like FrontLobby where that get delivered directly to you. A trend that we've seen a ton is that the documentation fraud is just rampant right now. There is a lot of forged documents, credit reports that someone says, here, here's my Equifax report that's clearly been altered, bank documents. So make sure that where you're getting those, they're getting delivered directly to you. So there's not the opportunity for you to actually have that document be altered in some sort of way.
Oh, I say all the time, never. I get calls from landlords all the time who are almost half crying. And I'm like, how did you pick them? Like, they provided me with their credit report. I'm like, never, except theirs. You always have to conduct your own credit report. And it's the credit report and background check. Like, there's a two and two fold that we need to be working with. And like Grant said, when you put it in your rental ad that you do monthly rent reporting, it does shy away from the professional tenants. I even had it when I was screening my tenants for this two-bedroom unit, and I did the girlfriend's credit, and then I did the boyfriend's credit, and it's like he's at good, she's at excellent. So it was a competition. I said, "Don't worry, don't worry. I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna put you in to the platform. We're gonna grow your credit. We're gonna get you up to your girlfriend. Don't worry about it." And then you get the energy went down a little bit. There was a lot of competition there. So this is something that you could be using through this incentives. Instead of giving you like 1 month's rent to take this property, put this as a perk, as a benefit, just like we provide fridge, stove, washer and dryer, and air conditioning, and including two-car parking. Make sure that you put in that you are offering the ability to help these tenants build their credit.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a good comment that came through also as far as verifying for Canley. Uh, there's a lot of things, and Kayla, maybe get you to give a few more examples as far as kind of some screening tips because you always have really good insights on this. But there was a couple questions around rent reporting. So I threw that term around loosely. If you're not familiar with it, what it means is through FrontLobby, you can create a lease for the individual. So if Kayla's my renter, I'd create a lease and I would start reporting on her. The system is going to assume that she pays on time every single month. So if an individual wants to use their on-time payments to build credit, they can simply provide consent either by using those lease clauses that I alluded to earlier, or they can provide consent directly in the platform, free for those tenants. When you're looking at reporting debts, which is really what a lot of landlords are concerned of, they want that protection to say, hey, if there's a delinquency, I want to be protected. I want that debt to show up on the credit file. It adds a lot of leverage when you're trying to recover that debt or reduce any sort of delinquencies. But really, it also helps inform future landlords of the delinquency that has existed. So when you're looking at a prospective tenant, you can say, hey, this Kayla person is awesome. She pays on time. I can see this. This is great. Whereas this Grant character is kind of sketchy. Like I see there's this debt here and he didn't allude to it earlier. And so it allows you to do your diligence and go forward. So the big thing to remember when you're looking to report this data is that consent is never required when you're looking to report a debt. And especially in a place like Ontario, where it can take a long time to evict someone when they don't pay their rent, reporting that rental data monthly to the credit bureaus as a debt, no consent required, no judgment required when you're looking to report unpaid rent and utilities is really one of your most powerful tools to make sure you're maximizing the likelihood of recovering any sort of debt.
And you know what, Grant? Like we've seen like Canley, we see like orders that are being posted all over social media. How, I don't know, like you gotta just we always caution that part of it, but at the same time we have to think like we have names, and we don't have birth dates, right? So we need to be able to identify when landlords are reporting this debt is that you collect the tenant's full name and their birth date in order to report that debt. This is way you can inform the other landlords and making sure that you are holding the exact tenant that you're reporting accountable because you're be able to tie it to that birth date. Right now, we have tenants with common names, and they're like, "Hey, like my name is on this site, but it's not me. I just have a common name with that person that has left a landlord high and dry with unpaid rent." So this is why it's very important to be the FrontLobby member, to be verified by FrontLobby, and being able to verify your tenants' information as you report them to the credit bureaus. So that way, everyone's all on the same page and making sure that they're all compliant compliant to the rules of there, because a lot of landlords are in a midst of like inheriting tenants, right? And sometimes when they inherit tenants, they're like, how do I get their birth date? I'm like, well, sometimes there's social media. Sometimes it's just about, doing an introduction and making sure you're able to captivate any type of information you're looking for, such as for emergency contact information. That if there's anything happening, how like who that tenant is, you're able to get it that way. But again, it's still to be, introducing these type of process in your tenant screening and always getting a copy of that ID, because you really don't know when tenants put you their information on that application. It's like, how do you know it's them, right? So making sure you're putting that information, and it's not only for the simple fact of screening, but it's for your safety. And I think with Bill 10 in Ontario, with criminal activity, making landlords responsible for tenants' criminal activity, it's very important that we know who we're renting to.
Without going too deep into Bill 10,
Yeah,
Kayla,
no, no, I opened up a can of worms there. I'm sorry.
in the 60-second overview of what that is and why you've mentioned that in a few of our conversations, you want to just kind of let anyone here that hasn't heard of that before what the impact will be for them
Well,
potentially?
it's gonna impact the landlords. It's gonna impact property managers. It's definitely gonna impact tenants. So, but it's a way for the government. It's received its royal assent. It's happening. It's just gonna go through the process of like what that looks like, because owners and property managers have to do their reasonable checks to make sure that, or reasonable understanding that their tenants haven't done any criminal activity in their properties. So, if we have a tenant that is doing drugs and trafficking drugs. We don't know exactly what the details of the criminal activity is. It just drugs? Is it sex trafficking? So all that's going to come out soon, but it is still something where they are going to make the property managers and landlords responsible for the tenants' criminal activity. And we don't know what we can do to make sure that it's reasonable. Maybe it's just going to be inspections. Maybe, we're supposed to do multiple inspections a year, but also being careful that it's not going to be considered as harassment. So we're still waiting for the full rollout of that bill, but to say the least, it's important that you are renting to the right people, because
Yeah.
that could result in a fine or the city coming to take your property. So it's just stay tuned, hold on to your seat, guys.
Um, I want to go into advocacy, but there's been a couple interesting questions that have come through that I want to jump in. First
Yeah.
off, when you have someone that's coming to look at the house, do you take a copy of the ID at that time, or is it really just a copy of the ID when you are actually going through the application to screen the
It would be
individual?
the application for me.
Yeah.
It's like soon as I have their information of what they're giving me, and then I have their ID, and then you take the ID, you take the application, and you match it to that credit report. I had a lady on TikTok. I'm on TikTok. I don't know why, but it's addicting. And she's like, "Hey, I've been a tenant. I've been doing it for 22 years. I pay on time. But my credit, I did have some, stuff that followed me. Like, why should I be denied a spot for because I had like bad debt elsewhere, but I paid my rent on time?" And I'm like, well, one, this is where, being able to be a landlord and identify that, yes, like people have had that and we want to see that. And that's why the collection of like this rent reporting being shared with Landlord Credit Bureau is going to be key to help them now. But at the same time, we need to see that they pay their other bills on time. And we also need to make sure that the information that they put on the application based on their job and where they used to live, like it all matches, right? So that's the key, is not just that, your credit score in itself. We need to know the address, we need to know your employment. We also need to know that you pay your other bills on time and that there's no trade lines or collections, because we do need to understand that I'm giving you a key to a unit that's thousands and thousands of dollars. I need to make sure that I have a responsible tenant, and you're going to hold landlords accountable. We need to hold our tenants accountable.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some questions that are coming up around specifics and jurisdiction. We obviously have to speak in a bit of general terms on a forum like this. So yes, we do recognize there is some limitations in BC or Ontario or wherever you're joining from. So please take some of our comments as some general advice, but always look into your local jurisdiction, because those can vary even sometimes within the province. So good flag in the chats to bring that up. Um, Going a bit deeper into some of the changes and trends that we're seeing, Kayla, like Ontario Landlords Watch is deeply involved with advocacy, changing policy, and those sort of things. When you think around how these evolving laws are going to impact landlords and tenants, do you want to share a few key points that you're seeing right now in the market that everyone should be aware of?
There's so much. It's
Limit to 5 minutes max. Okay.
I know, I know. You guys are like, this is an hour show in itself. You know what? I think there's a lot of changing aspects of affordability, right? I think affordability for tenants and what landlords are calling for, the unfairness and rules and regulations. Like we've seen a comment with BC landlords cannot have tenants' ID copies. Like, why not? This is something where you could be advocating for it, and we got to teach our landlords to advocate. But when it comes down to the politicians, this is affordability crisis. They're going to be potentially using the small private landlords as, a smoke and mirror effect to make sure that they are showing the tenants that they're doing everything to accommodate. But I always tell our landlords now, based on 2025, that we can't put all of our eggs in one basket, that we need to kind of move ourselves into different markets. I know a lot of Ontario and BC landlords have skippered off to Alberta because Alberta seems to be the golden child in our country. And again, they're into the states, right? And I think the states is definitely rocky with their leadership that's down there, but still, it's still something that's more appealing to what's happening. So we do have to just keep informing. It's education is the key, and we're always going to continue to have different places and to be a part of a community. And no matter which province you're from, I'm sure there's going to be an online community that you can lean on to help navigate through all your rules and regulations. And it's most important for you guys to connect and advocate to the elected officials because they're not professionals in all things that of discussion in our economy. So we have to do our part and do whatever we can to educate them. So definitely get to know who they are, what they're all about, educate them, and at the time when the election happens, make sure you support them and do door knocking for them.
Yeah. And Josh, what about on your side? Have you seen any kind of maybe even not laws, but like shifting trends as far as impacting you're on the leasing side or the listing side, sorry. Are you seeing kind of increased risks on the landlord in that space? And how's that showed up for you?
I mean, we've definitely seen shifting trends based on some of the laws, like, just there's a ton of people that have moved, like tenants have moved to Alberta because rent's cheaper and the laws are also significantly more landlord friendly. And so we're seeing a lot of changes there on the actual um, side around how it's impacting prices. I really do think that landlords are taking it's taking longer to rent, but I think that's a not a it's not a good thing, but it's better than renting to a bad tenant. And I think that's the big thing is we have to reset the expectation that with these additional burdensome laws, sometimes you do need to make sure that you're doing everything you can. And my big thing I always tell people is, it's not just screen the first person. My big advice is get a bunch of leads, and if you have five, six, seven leads, you can compare. If you only have a couple, the quality of lead is likely to be lower, and you're more likely to run into a lower quality tenant that presents more risk. And so really just make sure that you are, taking the time because it's not worth saving a week, renting it a week earlier, or saving $20, $30 on by avoiding a credit check or not taking the time to call the references. Really make sure that you're doing the work. And we have seen that in the listings are taking longer to rent for sure. But I think that's somewhat healthy given the elevated risk.
Yeah, I appreciate that insight. Maybe going deeper on the screening side, Kayla, you want to talk a little bit about some of the tenant rights when it comes to screening, because this comes up a lot as far as like what you can and can't do, what these tenant rights are. And maybe along that, I've heard you talk before, and I think it's relevant around kind of setting your criteria of what that is and when you should kind of stick with it versus, if there's any adjustments that you may want to make.
You know what? Like a lot of like I just had this question through a presentation with Remax, and they would say like, what do you say when the tenants are calling you and why they didn't get accepted, right? And we always say nothing. You say nothing. But you also have to respect that, even a small comment towards a tenant could be screwed into, a human rights issue, right? So, how many people are living here, or this house is not built for children, or, are you going to have multiple people here? Like anything with their nationality, with their race and their family size, like everything like that is what we also have to be very concerned about when you are trying to interview these type of tenants. And we're going to see the lack of education to our landlords and the reason why they find themselves into these situations because they're trying to grill them. I always like to do it as a friendship at first. It's almost like I tell people about my dog Fluffy. They tell me that they got a dog Bruno, that's a pit bull. I find out that they got a dog. Like there is little secret ways of like getting to know the person, and it sucks because you know what? I think every landlord, no matter who you are, you're human and you want to give everybody a roof over their head. But unfortunately, the system that is currently in place today that everyone has to follow it makes the risk so much greater. So that's what my job is, to try to limit that risk and to create that fair and balanced system. So no matter what happens, everyone does have a place to call home, but you just have to make sure that you are being respectful of the tenants and their human rights, and give everybody a chance to view the unit, give everybody a chance to fill out a rental application. Make sure you go and put them through that process, just like everybody else. Put them through the screening, asking for their verification of income, not so much of employment, because that's where you could be discriminated against someone just because they're on social assistance, right? So it's going to be a fine line between like your wording of how you speak to the tenants, but make sure the first and foremost is about protecting yourself.
Yeah. Josh, I see you nodding along to that. Anything you want to add, even on the listing side, or I
Uh,
assume you have something to say.
I was going to say, I just saw the poll results, and I'm happy to see that 78% of people screen every time. But I am curious, I don't know if we can add another poll quickly, is like, are they accepting tenants' versions of credit reports, or are they doing it themselves? Because again, I will say it's changed over the last few years, but um, I just think you really got to take matters into your own hands and make sure you are vetting all of the material and making sure that you're taking the precautions to protect your asset and make sure that the person you're renting to is who they say they are, and the data is not fraudulent. So I'm glad to see that. I actually feel like I remember seeing some data that even a couple years ago it was significantly lower. So I definitely
Closer to
think that we've
50-50.
seen the risks
Yeah.
elevated and people are taking now more precautions, which is great. I highly recommend everyone do it all the time. And again, I think the big thing is not just asking for it, but like vetting it. There you go. Again, I don't want to, I feel like I might have pushed people into voting one way or the other. So we'll see if it's unbiased, but please vote, the way you're actually doing it. I will say things have changed. And so, in the past, maybe that was acceptable, but I really do think today, you really got to call. I have a unit as well. And I remember calling a couple of people and, you check the reference that they put for their employer. It's not a company. It's, their friend, their roommate or whatever, speaking on their behalf. So you really got to, I agree with what Kayla said. We're all humans, and you want to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, but there are some bad apples out there, and so you just gotta make sure that you're doing your due diligence.
Yeah. Yeah, it's totally different. I mean, I grew up, my parents had rental properties. I remember the screening and things. It was very different back then versus right now. You have to be so careful, which,
Yeah.
Kayla talked about the human rights and those sort of aspects that you really have to protect yourself. And, that starts right from the very beginning. And there's been a couple of questions that come through around kind of validation reports, and you can't ask for a SIN within Canada. They're not obligated to give that to you. Like, platforms have also evolved around this. So, someone like FrontLobby, you can send a link to the tenant. They can enter their SIN into it and then go through a verification, and then that report gets delivered to you. So when you're thinking about validating an Equifax report that someone provides you, there's really no good way. You have to pull it yourself and get it delivered directly to you. And it's worth, in most jurisdictions in Canada, you can't charge someone to do screening. So as was alluded by both of them earlier, it's like, do your due diligence, get that top of the funnel, see a bunch of applicants, ask the questions, figure out a few that you want to go deeper on, and then pay for the reports, the background checks, do your diligence. So that way you have a best option when you're looking to do it. And that's worth a few extra days or a few extra bucks in order to
And
make
the
sure you
peace of
get the loan.
mind, you'll
Yeah,
you'll
yeah.
sleep so much better. Trust me,
Right.
you're gonna feel much more confident.
You know what's happening now though with the market then the downturn when you finally have that the people coming through, I think the landlords are going to be skipping a beat because they're like, "Oh, I think they are good. I'm going to get it to them right away." You know, it's like I don't want to lose them because they're going to be good tenants. Like sometimes it's like it's you have to go through the process. Never skip that process. And we I can tell you time and time again how many landlords have skipped that process and they've gotten themselves in a long battle. And it's not just like what you're missing out on rent. It's about how much you're going to be paying for a paralegal. It's how much you're going to be sacrificing your relationship with your spouse because of this rental journey that you went down on, and your wife told you not to. And now look what's happening. You know, you have to make sure that you have your all your processes in place. And if you're thinking about getting into real estate, like get this education now before there's an issue. I think that's where a lot of landlords spend a lot of their time dealing with an issue for a long time and then getting the education and then having to put that strategy in place. So education is going to be key, guys.
Yeah. Before we get into some questions here, I'll maybe kick it back to both of you as far as what advice we've given and talked about a lot of things, but is there any kind of closing thoughts or advice you want to share with individuals before we go into some of the specifics of the question?
I mean, everyone's doing the first step, which is just always trying to learn as much as you can and trying to educate yourself. So again, everyone here is taking that. Um, my dog hears someone at the door. Maybe it's a new tenant trying to apply. Sorry. But beyond that, beyond just constantly staying up to date with the ever-changing laws and trying to educate yourself and learning, again, I think it's just a lot about taking the extra steps to do the research, whether that's what's the most up-to-date rent, what changes are going on in my neighborhood, good and bad. The asset class, talking to other landlords and hearing it's just to me the big thing. If I had to summarize in one thing, is just keep doing more research and keep learning, and that's how you're going to get better at this. It's gonna how you're going to feel more comfortable scaling up if that is what you want to do, or just making it easy on yourself when you do want to try and find tenants. It's going to be so much easier once you've done the research and you feel comfortable in your processes. So again, there's a lot of specific things I could give, make sure that again, my big thing is always the trend I say is like, just try and promote as much as possible, get a ton of exposure because you have more leads at the top. You'll have better applicants that you can then ask. And then, yeah, you're only going to give maybe a credit check on one person, but I'd feel a lot better if I talk to 15 people and ask them questions than if I had talked to three and could pick the best from that. So my thing is always try and get as much exposure, try and get as broad a number of leads as possible so that you can really pick from the best and be choosy. And that's okay to be choosy. So that's kind of my 2 cents.
Appreciate that. Kayla?
I would like to say if now is your downtime, get your place looking absolutely fantastic. You know, make sure that your place is looking great, doing the modifications to improving the bathroom, the kitchen. The women love the kitchen and the bathroom. It has to be clean, it has to look great. Do any type of upgrades to your property. And just know that when you are finally ready to do that tenant screening, I seen some people talking about like realtors doing the screening, and they are going to get into like some screening aspect. But again, your best judgment is almost yourself as well. So you have to get your hands dirty. If you're in this industry, you have to make sure that you're doing your due diligence and making sure that you're screening the tenants. But most importantly, we are seeing ourselves into the need of trying to learn more about being a landlord. And I think we're not going to stop just on tenant screening. And I think there's a lot more that we could talk about on tenant screening, just how, people are like, oh, I want them to log in and I want them to, show me that they're doing their credit report right there. But it's not just the credit report, it's also the background check that we need to be getting from these tenants. It's also the verifying of their income and making sure that their address line up. But we have to give more. We have to give more in order to make sure that we're appealing to those tenants and that you are making sure that you're following every rule from your province to show that you're a good landlord. Because one small mistake can be actually absolutely huge. So that would be my tidbit for you guys today.
One last thing to build on, because you mentioned realtors and maybe they're doing screening again. No one's going to care about the success of your tenant more than you. No one's going to care as much. The incentives are aligned. So I always tell people to do it themselves because they care more than anyone else. Someone else, you're going to pay them. Maybe they'll do a good job. Maybe they won't. You're the one who cares the most. So I think it kind of puts a little more pressure maybe, but I also think you end up doing a much better job and you really take those extra steps when you're doing it yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah, good point. Okay, let's dive into questions. So for those of you that are still online, obviously, still got a good number here, which is great. The chat's been awesome. Lots of good information if you're kind of following along and screening through there. I won't be able to get to all the questions that are in there. So if there's something really key that you want me to ask, drop it in the Q&A and we'll try and get through that as we're going. So going back a little bit, an individual here is entertaining hiring a rental guarantee. They've been burned a couple times and they just don't want to take chances anymore. I'll maybe open up a bit on that. Rental guarantees they're a tool, right? They tend to be fairly expensive as far as the costs that they provide. So you have to think as whether that's going into your margin, especially when you're looking at rents that are dropping down, asset costs that are continuing to go up. There's often not a lot of margin when you're looking at that rental guarantee, which is usually a significant percentage of the rent every single month. I talked earlier about rent reporting through FrontLobby. Obviously, it's not going to work every time, but the delinquency prevention that it provides as far as creating an incentive that happens near real time, so within the month of an individual not paying their rent, that debt can be reflected on their credit file. So that's a delinquency prevention tool. Obviously, it doesn't hold the same weight as a rental guarantee as far as providing you funds back, but it really helps you mitigate any sort of risk as far as that debt's being going.
And it's a hell of a lot cheaper.
Yeah. Okay, another question. Our spaces are premium and we're attentive landlords. Any ideas how we can express the value being offered?
I mean, I'll dive in there because it's more on the marketing side. But again, I think, I think a big thing is that you want to say if it's a premium one, who are you trying to rent to? Like understanding who is likely to be able to pay for this and who is going to want the amenities or the location or the features that make your product unique and your unit unique. So I think that's really, again, some obvious ones, having really clear, well-lit, staged photography just to showcase the place. You want to make sure that you're putting it in the best light. And again, having a description that calls out all the unique features about it, whether it's is there a great sushi bar a block away that people might want? If this is a luxury unit, like people are going to want to know why they should pay that premium. And so give them a reason, tell them why. And again, this gets back to just knowing your product and being the expert for the location, for the unit, for the building, whatever it might be. You really got to understand the product and who is likely to want that and who's willing to pay that premium. And then the last thing I just want to say is, again, going back to the exposure, you got to make sure that you are getting a lot of exposure because, there's a lot of people out there who want a bachelor at a cheap rate. There's a lot fewer people that can spend $3,500 for a 3-bedroom every month or $4,000 a month or whatever it might be, depending on your location. And so you need to get more eyeballs just to get the right number of qualified applicants to see it. And so you are going to have to pay a little bit more for exposure on listing sites or on other sources. Maybe you even run Facebook ads if you want. I wouldn't recommend that. I think your best bet, your best ROI is spending a little money on listing sites like Rentals.ca, not to toot our own horn, but I strongly believe that the value you provide is well worth it. Because again, you really got to get a lot of eyeballs in order to see, for the premium people to see it and to get enough people applying on that property. So that's my 2 cents.
I agree. Like we had a lot of people like, where are you listing? Where are you listing? Right. And we are looking at different ways of listing. But I like what Josh said about like the pictures and high quality pictures. And again, like think of it as a twofold. Is that when you do pick that tenant, you have nice quality pictures of what that unit looked like before the tenant moved in. These are perfect evidence pictures if anything does happen with that tenant throughout the tenancy, that it's now evidence for when you have to go to the landlord and tenant board with that tenant too. So, always this is a business, right? And I think, you have to spend money at your business to make it to make it grow. And I think just like paying for quality pictures and listing on a site is going to be key. And it's still a great business, guys. We just have to, pivot. We just have to pivot.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. There are a couple questions here around, do you need to tell an applicant if you're pulling a report? Yes, because you do need explicit consent. So the team's going to drop a list to our clauses that I talked about earlier. Yes, they talk about rent reporting, which is great, have that conversation, but in that application also provides consent to do screening. So not to be confused, consent is never required when you're reporting debts to the credit bureaus, as we're doing with FrontLobby for rent reporting. However, when you're screening an individual, doesn't matter where you are in Canada, you do need consent to do that credit check, the background check. If you're using standard leases, in Ontario, that language is going to be in there. Most leases and applications that you see around Canada will have that. But if you don't have them, feel free to click the link here. Perfect. So there is also a question about reporting rent with collections. Don't want to dive too deep in the product, but you can check out FrontLobby for that. We allow you to report both current tenants, on-time payments and debts, as well as if you have a tenant that hasn't paid you within the past 7 years in Canada, you can report that debt to the credit bureaus as well with FrontLobby. So feel free to sign up, or there will be a link at the end where we'll do a QR code where if you're interested in rent reporting, then of course you can speak with one of our team members as well. Next question here. Some landlords like to rent room by room rather than the whole unit. The reason to rent out each room faster, and they're able to maintain the unit property by not letting to maintain the unit properly and not letting the tenant damage. Could you please share your thoughts on room by room versus leasing out the entire unit?
I got goosebumps.
Yeah. John, go first. Or I have thoughts. I mean, to me, it's a risk profile thing and what you want to do. In that, I'm not saying it can't work. We know many clients that do it and have great success doing it. I think it very much depends on what your product is. So, like, how are you trying to subdivide a 1 bedroom into 3 rooms? Probably not going to work. Do you have the right kind of property for it? Potentially, are you in the right market? Students might be more willing to do it than families. And again, what kind of risk are you willing to take on? Because I do think there's a different risk profile for, let's say, a family renting a 2 bedroom than someone who is willing to say, I will split a house with 4 other people and I'll rent my room. It's also a lot more work. You have more turnover. So if you're willing to be constantly finding new people and willing to take on that risk, again, you can do very well. So from a financial perspective, it really can work out and you can actually get better yields, but it is more risk, it is more work versus on an annual lease or just renting out the entire unit. So again, it's more about the product and your own risk profile, I would say.
Well said. Well said, Josh. The other side of like when you do take the risk and what happens, and I get to take that phone call, is when you have 3 bedrooms, they're all on individual leases. They're not all together. You have one that leaves because of the other tenant that is making their life absolutely hell. And then you try to re-rent that room that of the tenant who left, and the person who made the life of the other person hell is now going to do it to the potential tenants coming in. So because they really want the entire apartment to themselves. So they're going to sabotage you so that you don't try to re-rent that unit up, and they want the whole room for like the $600, $700. So that is what the I think the risk is. Sometimes what we're doing now, they're seeing one on a list, but on one lease, but we have to make it very clear to these tenants that if one stops paying, you all are assuming that responsibility. So be very knowledgeable on what that looks like and educate your tenants before you sign that lease with them.
So when you're looking at signing a lease for the full unit, if they're going, how do you view who should be a signatory for this as far as occupants versus actual tenants?
Good question. Obviously, you want to be able to say like all these people that you're like, say there's 3 people that are coming on there, you're going to be doing their credit check on all of them because they're all going to be living there and they're all going to be paying. And sometimes you just want to deal with one person just because then if that one person leaves, then the other people are going to be unauthorized tenants. So it is going to be for me, I just like having one person if I was dealing with it, and they could be the landlord. Let them be the little landlord, and saying, "Hey, you got to keep your occupants in check. If not, I'm coming after you."
Yeah, the only thing to keep in mind is if you have anyone that's a signatory, meaning is an actual tenant, you can tend to pursue them with the LTB. You can report that rental data if there is a debt, so it could goes on credit files. Similar with guarantors. Now, not necessarily that everyone does guarantors, but where we see that coming out is if you have someone that's newer to country or students as well, like being able to report in the guarantor in those situations where there is a debt, if they get delinquent, that is definitely one area where it could be a benefit to have more signatories. But Kayla's advice obviously is based on a lot of experience there as well. So Quick question, Bill 10, federal or provincial, Kayla?
Provincial.
Um,
I don't know why Doug Dunny did it. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm still trying to figure him out. I actually have a post that's going to be coming up. We just had an MPP that reached out to me thanking me for my submission and that they've taken my recommendations into consideration. So
so we've talked a little bit about this, but engaging a rental management company as opposed to self-management may mitigate the likelihood of securing undesirable tenants. Do you think that's true?
I think you need to be able to just as we screen our tenants, we need to screen our property management companies. I think a lot of people get into property management thinking, hey, this is going to be sweet money and this is easy, and they don't have their process in place, and things can fall apart pretty quickly. And we're going to see landlords who came to me because they've had just bad management, and it's also going to put a bad taste in the tenant's mouth because of bad management. So trying to reconnect that relationship back with the tenants when you had a bad manager, so that's why it's really important that we don't think that just because they are a property manager that they're going to be everything that you wish them to be and better than sliced bread and butter. We have to make sure that we are, doing our due diligence and making sure that we're screening them. They have a reputation within the community and that they are following these rules and regulations, and also taking part in webinars like this to make sure that they're expanding their education to because there's always going to be something new that we're learning when it comes down to tenant screening.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I hear from conversations, if you're debating a property management company, a lot of it comes around how much do you want to be involved and where do you want the money to go? Because if you're hiring a property manager or if you're using real estate agent to help screen, which we've talked about earlier, your people don't work for free. And so truly understanding what your cash flow is, especially as things get tight, what skill set you want to develop. Did a webinar last week with a guy that's been in this for 30 plus years, and you talked about almost getting the positions that scare you a little bit and then using the community like Ontario Landlords Watch, use the data from Rentals.ca, use the Facebook communities and things that are out there just to continue to upskill. So then you're not always going to have to rely on under other individuals, because over the long term, chipping away a few percentage every single month on rent guarantees, on property management, on realtors to rent, like all of a sudden all your profit is gone, and owning properties doesn't
What are you
seem to
doing it
make
for?
sense.
What are you
Yeah.
doing it for?
Yeah. So
And that's the thing. Like, we have the tools with FrontLobby. You can do your screening. You like a lot of people didn't know that you can do the credit checks yourselves,
yeah,
right? So having those tools, having the community to lean on when you do have these type of questions is going to be key in their success. So yeah, we're growing. We're growing as an industry. So all the tools and everything are here for you. It just takes some time to bring that awareness.
yeah. Yeah, we're coming up to the top of the hour here, so we're going to throw some slides up. But as these are coming up, maybe lead you into this, Josh. There's a question here about the landlord ratings or reviews on rentals.ca. Do you maybe want to talk about that and then highlight what you're giving away here today?
The landlord reviews. I'm actually not sure exactly. Can you read the full comment? I'll tell you exactly what we're giving away, which is
Yeah.
we have a playbook for small landlords, and I think that it's really meant for a lot of people who I've seen some great questions here, but again, I do think it's all about education and learning more, and again doing your research. And so we have some, again, no, there's no one size fits all, but I think the biggest thing here is avoiding easy and obvious mistakes. There have been other people who have made these mistakes, and so we've documented them, and hopefully you can learn from them and avoid them as well. And so these are really, it's a playbook to really help you make better decisions when renting out your place, how to find better tenants, how to screen them better, and just how to make sure that you're getting a great, again, at the end of the day, it does come back to an investment. So how are you making sure that you're getting a fair or good rental rate on there, and protecting again that investment. So it's a great read. It's not too long, really actionable insights there. So yeah, that's what we're giving away.
Awesome. And this is going to be sent out. So even if you had to drop off again, you will be able to get kind of link to the slides and recording afterward. Kayla, how can we connect with you?
Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, because we have a call-in show happening tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. So go on Twitter there to find me. I had a lot of questions I wanted to reply, but you could tell you can hear the ticking. So if you guys want to reach out to me, I'm happy to answer any of your questions if I wasn't able to do it through the webinar. And I'm looking forward to coming back on with a different topic with FrontLobby and again with Josh. And well said, Josh, for all the information that you're providing. And again, all the questions I get, where do you list now and where do we screen? And I won't touch base on the fact that we smell our potential tenants as they walk in their door.
Those are the types of info and tips you only get on the call-in shows around what smells do you look for in potential tenants.
You
Like,
smell them when they walk by you. And I'm telling you, this one tenant, she smelled really, really good. Like I was like, okay, like your house is nice and clean.
I'm calling timeout on that one. Yeah. Yeah. For those of you that haven't interacted with Kayla, I can't reiterate, awesome resource. So
Thank
the
you.
Facebook group that she runs, a bunch of people contributed to that. Kayla moderates it really well. She truly does pick up the phone. She truly does respond and help people. So don't be afraid. Like Josh and Rentals.ca has got a lot of info in that guide. There's a lot of info on the website. Go to Kayla. Like the important thing to take away, if you take one thing from this webinar, is use the community that's there. People have solved this problem. People know best practices. Go ahead and go and use it. And speaking about solving the problem, we do once a year, we do our best offering with FrontLobby. The premium membership, we're giving it away for $40 off a year. So it's $199 per year, allows you to report the rental data for up to 20 current leases every single month. So that's reporting on-time payments as well as debts for up to 20 leases, which more than cover most of the individuals on this call. So feel free to take advantage of that. Go on, use upgrade. You can use the code that's there. As well as if there's a bunch of questions around reporting and those sorts of things. Our team is here. You can email us anytime, support@frontlobby.com. You can go to our website. There's a QR code here. We're happy to jump on a call with you and share all that information. So kind of in closing here for everyone, thanks again for joining. Thanks for the questions. Sorry we couldn't get to everything, but Kayla and Josh, thank you for your time and for sharing all your insights. And let's hope to do it again soon.
For sure. Can't wait for doing it again. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Happy renting.
Happy renting. Good evening.